The 8-member ad hoc committee set up by the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, to probe a censure motion against the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, commenced sittings on Tuesday with the proponent of the motion appearing before it. Also in attendance was the Finance Minister and his deputies and his legal representation, Gabi Ochredako. The minority in Parliament during the hearing outlined some documents intended to be relied on as evidence to the allegations leveled against the Finance Minister.
We are strongly arguing that there is an opportunity cost to an expenditure of 23 billion for a banking sector cleanup. If you recall, the Association of Bankers called on Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa at the time and said that some interjection of some liquidity of some amount not exceeding 1 billion, if it at the time, and we'll tender it again tomorrow. Daily Graphic reported this in their front page. They said if we got 500 million, you could save a number of these banks. Now you said no, categorical, that you will not help them with any liquidity intervention. You ended up spending 23 billion in a clean up, where they said that many of them, if they got a certain modicum of support from government, so instead of spending 23 billion, and people have gone home comfortable with people's savings and investment. That must be of concern to you, Chairman, that you refuse to support those who are in need. Don't forget the families who have died as a result of they've been asked to go home because once the bank is not working, mother and child, wife and husband in crisis. So you refuse 500 million, 1 billion to save the life of some of these financial institutions, and you are happily saying that we should celebrate you after spending 23 billion, which you are not prepared to report. That's what he's emphasizing on, because this was below the line. So if you left out banking sector expenditure of 23 billion, who should bear the brand for it? Same public, same taxpayer. Those are the contradictions we are pointing out to.
But the legal representation of the Finance Minister, Gabi Ochredako, demanded for specific documents to each allegations for appropriate references and responses.
Since it's a quasi-judicial process, our client deserves fair hearing. Indeed, in the event of matters not going well, he faces potentially the severest punishment that a minister can get, which is removal from office. So all we are asking for are two things. You can give us a whole list of the documents, which we don't have physically, but that list will lead to an expedition which is wide, particularly when we have 1 week here. So I think that the first part of our request, which is full particulars of the facts in support of each of the allegations contained in the letter, must be first adhered to.
After submissions from the minority, the legal practitioner challenged the mandate of the ad hoc committee to probe allegations of conflict of interest against the Finance Minister.
As to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled on it. Our issue is that if you go into Article 284 of the Constitution, and Mr. Chairman, I'm not here to question how Parliament or its committees.
You are here to do your client's bit. Go on with it.
So I just want to make that point. If you read Article 284, with your permission, it says, a public officer shall not put himself in a position where his personal interest conflicts or is likely to conflict with the performance of the functions of his office. Now, if you combine that with Article 287, and if I may read, it says, an allegation that a public officer has contravened or has not complied with a provision of this chapter shall be made to the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. SHRAJ. And in the case of the Commissioner of Human Rights and Administrative Justice, to the Chief Justice and the rest of it. But a relevant part is that when a public officer is to face any charge or any allegation or any ground of conflict of interest, it is SHRAJ that the Constitution says must deal with it. And if I may carry it a little further, there's a case that I think we are all familiar with, Okujetu Ablakwa number 2, and Attorney General Obechabe Lamte number 2, 2012 Supreme Court report at page 845. And just for the purposes of this, let me just quote. And this was JSC Brobe. The complaint of conflict of interest made by the plaintiffs against public officers or the officials of the Lands Commission and those of the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing would be dismissed because specific remedy had been provided under Article 287 of the 1992 Constitution, which required complaints of conflict of interest against public officers to be exclusively investigated by the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and in the case of a complaint against the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice by the Chief Justice.
Inside the chamber, the Minister of Employment and Labour Relations, Ignatius Bafo-Ewa, has given assurances that the National Tripartite Committee is yet to determine a new minimum wage. He was responding to a question from the Nalorigo Gambaga MP, Seidu Isifu, about an increment in the daily wage to cushion Ghanaians in their current economic difficulties.
Government has commenced processes for the determination of the 2023 National Daily Minimum Wage by the National Tripartite Committee. The Speaker, the negotiations are ongoing and will update the House when we are done. Mr. Speaker, can I find out from the Minister what indication he can give us as far as the timing is concerned? How soon will these negotiations be completed for a new minimum wage to be announced? Thank you. As I indicated, this is a tripartite function, and one party cannot say that it will come to a determination on a particular date. We are negotiating, and depending on when we finish, we will update the House. I want to believe that we will be able to finish maybe before the budget is ready.